get into exactly what this means for you. Let's dive in. As a quick explainer for what's going on here, we've got, for the first time in a very long time, a agreement between two different political parties, and a illicit agreement that is out there in the open that, hey, yes, we will back your government up and not allow it to fail for the next number of years. So this has big implications for every Canadian. If you haven't yet heard, the NDP and Jagmeet Singh have reached an agreement with Justin Trudeau and the Liberals to support them until 2025. Now, this is a big deal because right now the Liberal government is a minority. So at any point throughout political discourse, if there's a big vote, a confidence vote they call it, and they get voted down, and the vote doesn't pass, well, then there is an election that's triggered. But with this support from the NDP that has just been confirmed as of about 45 minutes ago, well, that can't happen. The Liberals will be in power until 2025 unless something changes here. So the NDP will be propping up the Liberals until then. Now, there's pros and cons to this, right? The NDP and the Liberals seem to be coming together to make this make pharmacare and dental care a priority. It actually seems that Trudeau is saying that, hey, we're going to go forward with a dental care program, but some of the issues here that the Conservatives are pointing out is that, hey, maybe we will never have an answer to inflation and the problems of the cost of living and housing throughout this entire Liberal sort of leadership era, right? We don't have this opportunity to sort of press them. We have no power over anything because everything is going to pass every single time because the NDP are going to support the Liberals. But before we get too much in depth here just chatting about it one-on-one, I want to swing over and take a listen to the official press conference that Trudeau just held this morning. Now, there were rumors about this even as early as last night, but we didn't have all the details, but now it seems like we're going to get them. So I'm going to swing over here to CPAC, which is where I like to watch these things. I'll throw on the headphones. Let me sort of scan, because CPAC does this weird thing where they don't actually, they start the video a lot earlier than the actual press conference begins. So we'll scroll to when we actually see Trudeau here, and we're going to hear it right from the horse's mouth, what's going on here. And Jagmeet Singh is about to give a live press conference sort of outlining their details. So we're going to go over that. We're going to talk about what this means for you in terms of the cost of living, any investments that you have, and how this sort of decision could be impacted by that, what this is going to do to real estate, some of the sort of problems I see there with what's going on with the leadership, with real estate leadership here in the country. We're going to get into all of that, but let's start here with Trudeau. Let's just find the start of his speech here. I think this is going to be rather interesting. This is something that's certainly unprecedented in this political era. We, of course, saw coalition governments many years ago between these two parties, and there seems to have been like a sort of under the table agreement that the NDP would prop up certain elements of the Liberal government, but now we have this formalized. Let's take a listen. And before we do, thanks for tuning in, everyone. I see Alex and John and Nature and Taz and Jim and Ryan and ML, Nancy, Alex, Elizabeth, Kevin, Steve, Oliver, Johnny, Nancy Hall. Great to see you guys here. If you haven't already, say hi in the chat, but let's listen in now.
Bonjour, bienvenue à cette conférence de presse. Le Premier ministre, ce matin, va faire une allocution d'une vingtaine de minutes.
Okay.
Merci, Louis.
Here we go.
Good morning. Bonjour tout le monde. For over 2 years, Canadians have worked hard to overcome incredible challenges. The sacrifices and hardships of the pandemic have been greater than we could have imagined. Thousands lost a loved one. Businesses struggled as we all stayed home. Moms, dads, and kids had to adapt to a new reality, while seniors suffered in isolation. The federal government had the backs of Canadians, and Canadians rose to the moment with choosing compassion, hard work, and resilience. Aujourd'hui, la guerre criminelle de Vladimir Poutine en Ukraine, du prix des alliés Canada, alongside our democratic partners, is helping Ukraine defend itself against authoritarianism. It's the right and necessary thing to do. And Canadians are responding to these challenges with the same resolve and resilience they've demonstrated over the last 2 years. Even in tough times, Canadians are as determined as ever to build a better future for themselves, for our children and grandchildren, and for the rest of the world. 6 months ago, Canadians gave Parliament clear marching orders to deliver on this better future by investing in a
Okay, you know one thing that I'm going to make the executive decision right here, and this is how I usually watch my videos. I watch it at like double speed. We're not going to go quite that far, but I find this pretty slow. So we're going to go up to 1.5 just so we can get the most information to you as quickly as possible without it being overwhelming here.
Strong and growing middle class, more good, well-paying jobs, economic growth and climate action, housing and child care affordability, better health care, and continued reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. The message from Canadians was as clear as the mandate they gave Parliament. Work together to put people and families first, deliver results, and build a better future. This is what Canadians expect from their politicians. Today, I'm announcing that the Liberal Party has reached an agreement with the New Democratic Party to deliver results for Canadians now. This supply and confidence agreement starts today and will be in place until the end of this Parliament in 2025. What this means is that during this uncertain time, the government can function with predictability and stability, present and implement budgets, and get things done for Canadians. I've thought long and hard about this. It was not an easy decision. With so much instability around us, Canadians need stability. We're different political parties. We stand for different things, but where we have common goals, we cannot let our differences stand in the way of delivering what Canadians deserve. That's why we're taking this step. Both parties.
Wow, this is wild. The first thing that comes to mind is he mentions there directly, hey, we can pass budgets. Whatever we want to do, we can do. This is kind of like them having a majority government now. They can pass anything that they want. So they're going to bring forward a budget here in April. Could be a high spending budget with tons of new social programs, maybe different benefits for folks. This could be a pro or a con depending on how you look at it. Certainly with high sort of inflation right now, there's sort of critiques around that. Let's continue.
Have identified key policy areas where we share similar objectives, and we've agreed to work together to put the needs and interests of Canadians first. This agreement is not about compromising the core beliefs of either of our parties or denying the differences between us. What it is about is making sure that those differences don't stand in the way of delivering for Canadians. We both believe firmly in Parliament's role of keeping the government accountable. This agreement maintains that critical function. We'll continue to engage in healthy debate with each other and disagree on things, just like we'll also continue working with other parties in the House of Commons to reach consensus and make progress together. This is what working together constructively is all about. And we look forward to working with any parliamentarian from any party who wants to deliver for the good of all Canadians. Aujourd'hui, j'annonce que le Parti libéral a conclu une entente avec le nouveau Parti démocratique afin de produire des résultats dès maintenant pour les Canadiens. Ne va pas remettre. Tout comme on va nobody benefits when increasing polarization, dysfunction, or obstruction dominate our Parliament.
That's a shot directly at the Conservatives. The Liberals have been saying, hey, Conservatives, your critiques, they're not critiques. You're just trying to sort of shut us down and not let us do work. I would tend to disagree with that most of the time. I definitely see that there's a lot of solid points that are being brought up by the Conservatives that there's not really an answer for from the Liberals, certainly on housing and certainly on affordability. So it's going to be interesting to see the take here because the NDP have been pressing the Liberals on this affordability side as well. So I don't know if they have the leverage to do that anymore. And maybe this will make affordability better because there'll be more collaboration between the NDP and the Liberals, but perhaps it'll make it worse because there can be less dissent.
Toxic partisanship prevents us from agreeing on simple truths and facts. When Parliament doesn't work properly, progress stalls on the important and urgent issues Canadians expect solutions to. This agreement is about focusing on what we agree on instead of what we disagree on what unites us instead of on what divides us. Every piece of legislation will continue to get the scrutiny it merits. Committees will continue to do their essential work. And members of Parliament will continue representing their constituents and holding the government to account. Nos priorités.
I want to see what happens in these committees. If you don't know, I watch a lot of the finance committee meetings, especially when there's important bills being discussed inside of them. And if NDP actually does sort of vote against inside of these committees is where the actual legislating gets done, right? Here's where they change the bills and make additions or retractions or make edits to it. Traditionally, the NDP will vote however they want to vote, but if they're also voting in favor of liberal policies inside of these committee meetings, well, that's a far bigger deal because the legislation doesn't get that extra sort of chance in these committee meetings to get a second look and get a change. If they have a majority vote from the folks that are in the Finance Committee or any other committee, well, then the scrutiny really isn't there. But it'll be interesting to watch how that first Finance Committee meeting goes following this agreement.
Sont les mêmes que celles que les Canadiens ont données au Parlement lors de la dernière élection. D'abord, on va améliorer les soins de santé. Il faut faire des investissements pour réduire la pression sur les systèmes de santé en raison de la pandémie. We will make life more affordable. We know that rising housing costs are putting real pressure on Canadians, so we'll keep building affordable housing. We'll also crack down on unfair practices and implement a home buyer's Bill of Rights. And we'll deliver changes that make owning a home more accessible for middle-class families and first-time home buyers. Families can count on us to continue delivering the change they deserve. That's why we'll keep investing so that $10 a day childcare is a reality for all families in Canada. Because we believe that every child should get the best start in life and that every parent, especially every mom, should be able to afford to pursue the career they want. On va lutter contre la crise climatique et créer des bons emplois bien objectifs climatiques. Inuit, 10 days of paid sick leave for all federally regulated workers start travail pour atteindre nos objectifs climatiques. We will deliver a better deal for Canadian workers, including ensuring that 10 days of paid sick leave for all federally regulated workers starts as soon as possible this year and continuing to support labour unions. We will keep moving forward on truth and reconciliation with First Nations, Inuit and Métis peoples. As part of this, we'll make more investments in Indigenous housing this year, continue addressing violence against Indigenous women and girls, and be there to support the survivors of the residential school system. We will deliver a fairer tax system for the middle class by addressing the profits made by financial institutions during the pandemic, and we will work together to strengthen our democracy and eliminate barriers to voting and participation. All these are things that we had in our platform. All these are things that we committed to Canadians that we would work hard on and constructively on. And that's what this agreement is about. It's about fulfilling the clear mandate Canadians gave Parliament by improving the way we do politics so we can act now to deliver good jobs, climate action, more affordable housing and childcare, a stronger middle class, and a better, more prosperous future for everyone. Merci beaucoup. Je suis maintenant heureux de prendre vos questions.
Okay, so here's where we get into the real grit, right? We're about to hear from the reporter questions. So that whole speech is like framing this in a very positive way. Let's see what the reporters have to say about this, and if this is something that we're going to get some details around, like the not so great sides of this, because I think that there are pros and cons to this. We might see like more impactful change more quickly, but with less scrutiny, maybe that change won't actually work out for all parties involved. So let's flip back over to this and let's listen in on what these reporters have to say. I think it's going to be rather interesting.
Alors, comme il y a beaucoup de gens ce matin pour les questions dans la salle, les journalistes ici se sont entendus pour poser une question.
The evolving situation. Good morning, Prime Minister. The NDP has not expressed support for increased defence spending despite the evolving situation in Europe. You are en route to the NATO summit today. Does this mean that Canada will not be quickly seeking to increase our share of defence spending to 2% of GDP? Other allies are increasing their spending. What's the plan?
This agreement is about working together constructively in the areas where there is agreement. And in the areas where there is not agreement, we will continue to do the things that the Liberal Party was elected to do, and we'll look for support from other parties as necessary as we move forward. In regards to the situation in Ukraine, Canada is pleased to be increasing its contributions to NATO as enhanced forward presence and the Operation Reassurance. We continue to stand with Ukraine and give all the support we can. We continue to condemn the illegal and increasingly horrific war by Vladimir Putin. And I look forward to engaging with our partners at NATO and in Europe over the next couple of days.
Christian Noël de Radio-Canada.
Bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau. De mémoire, dans le discours du trône...
Le logement, as I said a number of times, I'm planning on continuing to serve Canadians through and beyond the next election.
A leadership race within your party?
As I said a number of times, I'm planning on continuing to serve
office for almost 10 years. Are you committed to staying on and running another election campaign in that year, or do you imagine a leadership race within your party?
As I said a number of times, I'm planning on continuing to serve Canadians through and beyond the next election.
Wow.
Crystal de Global.
Hi there, Prime Minister.
So that would be 10 years at when this parliament ends, and he's going to have leadership until then, and then plans on running again after that. Interesting. Okay.
So thank you for taking my question. Were there discussions to make this a formal coalition and give the NDP cabinet seats, and why didn't that happen?
After the last election, I made it very clear in my response to Canadians that I knew that parliamentarians needed to work together to deliver concretely for Canadians. I think that was the message we've heard from Canadians clearly over the past couple of elections. And therefore, conversations began with the New Democrats on the areas in which we saw an ability to work together to be able to make Parliament function better, to be able to continue to deliver on ambitious initiatives for Canadians that, in a time of uncertainty, Canadians deserve. That was our focus every step of the way. We saw in the previous Parliament what happened to even issues where there was consensus in the House that got dragged down, that got slowed down. And we weren't able to deliver as much as we wanted to, but as much as Canadians deserved from a government that wants to be there to have people's backs. So what we're able to do with this one is offer the stability that will allow us to continue to work hard on fighting climate change, on building more housing, on delivering on the many things that Canadians expect from a strong progressive government. And that's exactly what this is all about.
Yeah, Robson, Canadian Press.
Good morning. The NDP's priorities for many years have included Pharmacare and dental care. Are either of those things something you had to promise them in order to get this deal?
We recognize that moving forward on delivering for Canadians, we aligned on the broad themes, doing more on healthcare, doing more on the environment, doing more on housing. These are things that we got elected to do more on. And finding areas of agreement where we could move forward with the NDP. We have a number of Liberals who, for a long time, have been talking about the need to continue moving forward on Pharmacare, continuing to expand support for low-income Canadians, including with dental care. So these are things that fit within our universe of priorities, but are easy to move forward on in a constructive way that assures that on a broad range of issues, Parliament gets to focus on delivering for Canadians. Parliament will be able to be there to continue to support Canadians while people work across party lines in all parties to make that a reality.
Raymond Fillon, TVA.
Bonjour, Monsieur le Premier ministre. Qu'est-ce que vous
Des capacités de travailler, que ce soit que les Canadiens
That everyone can still do.
constructives avec les autres partis.
Dominic Charles, Toronto Star.
Good morning, sir. A lot of your comments seem to be addressing concerns in your own party and perhaps in your new dance partners party, that everyone can still do their job and do what they came to do here. But I'm confused as to what limits this agreement and the support. Like, what defines confidence? Do you have a definition of that? Is it only money bills? When it comes to defense spending, for example, will the NDP's view of that veto what you want to do in Ukraine?
I think it's important to say that it's not just about reassuring people that the formulas of Parliament will be respected. Both of our parties understand deeply how important it is for people to have confidence, not just in government, but in our democratic systems. That we're in a time where we are seeing around the world challenges to democracies, erosion of democracies. And that's where the role of parliamentarians to hold governments to account, to ask tough questions, to demand transparency and openness continues to be at the center of our working relationship with the NDP and with all other parties. We know that delivering for Canadians needs to, at the same time, reassure them that democracy is strong and that government is being held to account. And that's exactly what this agreement is focused on, saying there are broad areas in which we agree. We should be able to work constructively together and not have Parliament be obstructive so we can deliver for Canadians, but at the same time, point out that democracies can be strong not only when they're toxic or hyper-partisan, but when they're also collaborative and focused on delivering concretely for Canadians. That's what this is about.
Boris Pou, Le Devoir.
Okay, so just a quick take here is like it's curious to like hear him saying, well, this is like we want to make sure that people are held to account, but we need to make sure that we're also delivering. You got to think about it. No matter which way that you swing politically, whether it's more left leaning or more right leaning, you got to think about it. If the roles were reversed and you had a conservative leader here and they were teaming up with another political party to not have to have any oversight and with this liberal NDP team up, well, like who's to decide exactly what is a confidence vote? Who's to decide like when the NDP are going to sort of fall in line with the Liberals and when they aren't? They say that this is all about like having scrutiny for the government but being able to work together. But you got to think about it in the flip terms. If you're somebody who's very left leaning and loves the Liberals, loves the NDP, well, how would you feel if there wasn't oversight in a time of conservative leadership? This is the thing I always sort of talk about here is like we have people on this channel with all views from the left to right. But you got to think about the sort of precedent and what this means long term, and just like politically how this is functioning, and will this actually be the best thing for Canadians?
Bonjour, Monsieur le Premier ministre. Vous vous souvenez sans doute que le Premier ministre du Québec, François Legault, avait mis en garde lors des dernières élections contre les partis centralisateurs qui faisaient des promesses pas dans leur champ de compétences. Avec ce qui est annoncé aujourd'hui, assurance dentaire, assurance médicaments,
Que les gens aient accès. Et oui, et les Québécois vont pouvoir
Your own platform.
focuser sur ce dont les Canadiens ont besoin.
Brian Timothy, National Post.
Yeah, sir, your own platform last fall didn't include Pharmacare or dental care in any sort of detailed way. You're already projected to run large deficits over the next couple of years. How will this fit into the government's financial picture?
We remain committed as Liberals to both being there to have Canadians' backs and being there for fiscal responsibility. We demonstrated during this pandemic that the best way to grow the economy, and get our jobs back and get businesses roaring back was by making historic investments to support Canadians. We know that support for Canadians and economic growth goes together, that it has to be done in a fiscally responsible frame, and that's absolutely what we will always do. Nothing in this agreement prevents us from continuing to be responsible stewards of the public purse and delivering for Canadians in a way that creates growth and opportunity for all into the coming years. And that's what we're going to stay focused on.
Don Perry, CBC.
Hi, Prime Minister. I know you say that Canadians elected MPs to work together, and I know you said there's still going to be debate under this deal, but Canadians gave you a minority, and you aren't in fact giving yourself a majority. So is this what Canadians voted for?
The conclusions drawn by analysts, by Canadians, by political parties following the last election is that it's a minority government, so parties need to work together. That's what a minority government means. It means Canadians.
If it's a minority government and people need to work together, then why do you require this deal to be signed? Can you not just work together with the NDP and allow them instances to sort of push back against you? Like, I know the NDP are going to frame this as like, hey, we are accomplishing these goals. We're going to get dental care. Maybe we're going to get these other things. We're going to hear from Jagmeet Singh here in a second. But it's sort of curious, is like, is this actually what Canadians voted for? We voted in a minority government, but now there's this effective majority government with the NDP's support, almost like a coalition, but not exactly. So interesting to say this is what Canadians voted for.
Canadians in this difficult time elected a government with an ambitious platform for Canadians on healthcare, on housing, on environment, on reconciliation. But they gave a minority government because they said, you need to work with other parties to get this done. That's exactly what this agreement is about. It's about saying, in the areas where we have alignment with the NDP, we're going to work together constructively to deliver for Canadians in these times of challenge and uncertainty. And in areas we don't agree with the NDP, we're going to need to continue to work with other parties on advancing the priorities of Canadians. That's what this agreement is, and it is a responsible answer to the uncertainty we're in, to the challenges facing democracies with hyperpartisanship and toxic polarization, of saying, let's actually make deliberate efforts to work across party lines so we can get the things done for Canadians that Canadians voted for in the last election, in voting for a number of different parties with similar approaches. That's the focus we have. This is about demonstrating that even in times of challenge and difficulty, governments can come together with parties to get things done for Canadians.
Alors, je dois passer aux questions sur Zoom. Si on a le temps, je...
Les choses, les systèmes de santé, propos-là,
son veto se fait
depuis longtemps. Cette année, pour les enfants de familles affaiblies. C'est parti de corps qui...
See if there's any more English in here. And we're going to switch over to Jagmeet Singh soon.
As a Liberal Party. Dans des moments d'incertitude et d'imprévisibilité.
Je pense que malheureusement, ça va.
The focus that we have as a Liberal Party has always been on delivering on an ambitious platform to have Canadians' backs, to grow the economy, to fight climate change, to stay fiscally responsible while creating greater opportunities for all Canadians. That doesn't change. When, following the last election, we saw the level to which there was alignment on many of those key themes with the New Democratic Party, we started talking about ways we could ensure that on the areas we agreed, Parliament would function smoother, and we'd be able to deliver more things for Canadians at a time of uncertainty, where Canadians need their governments to be there for them, not foundering in partisanship and toxic divisions. So this approach was always focused on working together collaboratively where we agree, agreeing to disagree where we don't. It was never about creating any greater formal agreements or power sharing. It was always about saying, look, there's things we agree on. Let's work constructively together on that to deliver for Canadians. And that's exactly what we're announcing today.
That's really it. Like, I'm just curious about the sort of framing of like the Parliament was toxic and we need to do this because Parliament wasn't functioning. Like, who is the one that's deciding what a toxic Parliament is or a non-functional Parliament is? Like, does this set the precedent for any government to say, hey, the Parliament's toxic because people are pushing back against things? Like from watching the question periods and watching the committee meetings, it seems like there's actual sort of questions and actual sort of concerns being raised, and like I constantly hear non-answers and a lack of execution. But again, I'm trying to stay as down the middle here as I possibly can, and I would be saying the same sort of thing if there was a Conservative leader here saying the similar things, because of course on this channel we like to stay as down the middle as possible.
C'est ce qui met fin à cette conférence de presse. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Trudeau. Bonne journée.
Merci tout le monde. Merci tout le monde. Thank you very much, everyone.
Oh my gosh. Oh yeah. Okay. So you guys have just heard me talking this whole time with no mic.
Bonjour à tous, bienvenue. On va commencer cette conférence de presse avec une...
We're just saying we're going to hear from Jagmeet Singh in just a second. And after Jagmeet Singh, we're going to listen in on Bergen, the interim leader of the Conservatives. Likely she's not going to be too happy with this because now the Conservatives essentially have no power in the House of Commons.
Allocution du chef du NPD, Jagmeet Singh, suivi d'une trentaine de minutes de questions dans la salle et sur Zoom. So welcome to this press conference. We will start with a speech from Mr. Singh, then about 30 minutes of questions in the room and on Zoom. Mr. Singh, la parole est à vous.
Merci, thank you. We've had a really tough 2 years as Canadians. Speaking with a lot of people, and they talk about how it's been tough. The pandemic has been really hard on a lot of people, and the cost of living going up is making it really hard on folks. And then we've got a war where people are feeling less safe. And in this time, everyone I talk to, people are telling me that they need help now. And they expect politicians to deliver that help. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're using our power to get help to people. We are getting help for people that need their teeth fixed. We're getting help for people that need to buy their medication and can't afford to. We're getting help to people that need to find a home to call their own and can't afford one. We're getting help to people dealing with the climate crisis and making sure that we do everything we can to build a better life for people. This is our obligation. I got into politics to help people. And I think about all the folks that I've met, people that came to me with their hand over their mouth because of their teeth not being in good health. The seniors I've spoken to that could not afford medication because they just don't have the budget to afford it. Young families that can't find a home. These are people that are worried, and kids are worried about their future. They're worried about the climate. And what we've been able to do is to use our power in this minority government to get help to people, to get help to people in this difficult time. And I want you to know, we've got your back. We're here for you. We hear you, we see you, and we're fighting to get you that help, and we are delivering that help. On a parlé avec plusieurs personnes pendant ce temps difficile, et ils ont partagé leur histoire. Ils ont dit que c'est un marchandise indisposable. Et dans ces temps de pour les gens, when people needed help, we're so in this difficult, I want to add that on va continuer notre travail. On va continuer de lutter pour les gens. Le travail n'est pas fini. I also want to add that the work isn't finished. This is not a destination, but a starting point. And we're going to continue to fight. We're not going to let the Liberals off the hook. We're going to continue to fight to make sure people get the help they need. So in this difficult time when people needed help, we are using our power to get them that help. We're making sure people get help to get their teeth fixed, to get the medication they need. And we're not going to let the Liberal government off the hook. We're going to continue to fight hard for people and continue to make sure we hold them to account to deliver these things that people need. Merci. Thank you so much. I'm ready for your questions.
Alors, on va commencer les questions. Une question de suivi, s'il vous plaît. On va prendre des questions sur Zoom tout de suite après. J'inviterai les gens qui sont sur Zoom à lever la main tout de suite, s'il vous plaît, pour signifier votre intention. So we will start with questions in the room. One question, one follow-up. We will take after questions on Zoom. I would invite people joining us by Zoom to use the raise your hand function now so we can see you. On va commencer avec Christian Noël de Radio-Canada.
Bonjour, M. Singh.
Bonjour.
Durant la campagne de 2019 et durant la campagne...
Une outil pour faire face...
Vous avez...
On a utilisé notre pouvoir dans notre travail. The opportunity that we have...
Can you explain to Canadians when did these talks start and why did they come about?
Well, from the beginning, as soon as we were in a minority government, I was interested in getting help to people. I wanted to use the opportunity that we had in government to help people. That was always my goal, and it will always be my goal. And early on, we had discussions about how we could deliver help to Canadians, how we, New Democrats, could fight to get help to people, and how we could push the government to do that. And those discussions started off, didn't continue, and were able to be picked up again. And so this is always something I wanted to do. I always wanted to get help to people. I always wanted to use the Parliament as previous New Democrat leaders have used Parliament, use their power to get help for people. Tommy Douglas used his power to bring in Medicare. Jack Layton used his power in a minority government to bring in affordable housing. And we are using our power now to take a bold step forward on dental care, on pharmacare, and help to people. People need this help. And what is our job if not to help people out?
On that last question, can you get specific at all? Was it January, February, March? When did these talks in terms of a formalized agreement begin? And I'm wondering, the Prime Minister also spoke about essentially that this is a responsible agreement to combat hyperpartisanship and toxic polarization. What role, if any, did the convoy that we saw in Ottawa figure into these discussions?
I'll take, just for context, I think that there are legitimate concerns people have had about politicians that have been using political issues as maneuvering, as games, as strategy. There have been wedges that have been created just for political gain, and I feel like that has eroded trust in public. And what people expect us to do, when people are going through a difficult time, they need help. And they expect the people they elect to get them that help. And I really believe that showing that we can actually fight to get help to people shows people they can trust us. They can trust that we're going to fight for them, that we're going to help them out. And that's really important. I want people to know that. I want you to know you can trust me to always fight for you. And I'm hoping that this moment now where we've used our power to achieve these results for people is giving people confidence that we can be there for them. In terms of when it started, as soon as there was a minority government, in the first minority government, we started to have conversations about the things that we thought were priorities. And then again, when we were re-elected in another minority government in 2021, right away in the late fall, we started talking about what our priorities would be in a minority government. And so those discussions happened right away. And they took some time, and there were some pauses and gaps in between, but we were immediately interested in using this opportunity to help people, using our power to get people the help they need, and that's what we've done.
Crystal, the Global.
Hi there. Thank you for taking my question. question. There are a lot of major promises outlined in this deal, including Pharmacare and dental care. What is your specific plan if the Liberals fall short on what you agreed to?
Well, the accountability mechanism is that we've got this document that lays out what our priorities are. And we will be evaluating every budget, every decision made with this document. And it's publicly available. People can see exactly what we fought for. We fought to get people dental care. That's going to start with kids under 12. And so we want to make sure that every kid in this country that doesn't have dental care gets it. These are really important things, and we really believe in using everything we can, doing everything we can to achieve them. We want to make sure people get the help they need, and we've got a document that we're going to rely on, and we're going to hold this government to account. We're going into this eyes wide open, and I want that to be clear too. We know that it'll take continued work, continued pressure, and accountability to achieve these results. So we're going to continue to fight every step of the way to get people the results that we fought for so far.
How are you going to continue to do that if they fall short on the promises that they gave you?
Just give me 1 second. If they fall short on what we've agreed to, then the deal doesn't continue. That's why we've got this deal in front of us. If they don't deliver on what we have fought for, if they don't deliver on what Canadians need right now, then they have not held up their side of the bargain. But I'm going into this with a strong conviction that we can get this done. I'm going into this with a strong belief that we're going to continue to fight hard, and we're going to force these results for Canadians. We're going to make sure people get the support they need. We're going to make sure people can get their teeth looked after. We're going to make sure people can afford their medication. We're going to make sure that people can find a home they can afford. We're going to fight hard for these things. These are important problems in people's lives that need help, and we are fighting to get that help.
Inès Lombardo, Franco-Presse.
Bonjour, Monsieur Singh. J'ai bien compris que cette entente était basée sur la...
Des choses pour les gens.
Et
n'inclut sur les autres enjeux. Utiliser notre...
ensuring those programs are fully many times. That to ask about the...
C'est important de dire que ce sont des priorités dans une entente, mais on a des autres priorités aussi qui continuent.
Hi, Tessie Sanchi, Hill Times Research. I'd like to ask about the healthcare components. Mr. Singh, you've been very clear and publicly said many times that when it comes to Pharmacare, when it comes to long-term care, you want to see them fully in the public system. How, in terms of this agreement, is that like a deal breaker? Have you had those conversations about ensuring those programs are fully public, or is the NDP willing to agree to a mixed public-private plan for both?
So for Pharmacare, we've been really clear, and the Pharmacare Act that we want to see passed is based on the principles of a universal and public Pharmacare program. We believe that everyone should have access to medication, and that's fundamental, and that's the next step in our healthcare system. And what we've done today is used our power to move that forward, to deliver Pharmacare for people, to move that forward in a really meaningful way. That's important to us, and that will remain our priority. It is also the government's commission report's recommendation. So their own commission report recommends a universal public system. We believe that's correct, and so we'll continue to push for that. I also just want to mention what's I think something worth noting, that it wasn't less than a year ago that the Liberals voted against our dental care program that we were able to put into this agreement. That's something that they voted against not a year ago, and we were able to fight to get that. Pharmacare is something both the Liberals and the Conservatives voted against just 2 years ago, and now we're moving forward with it. So these are two priorities of ours, both dental care and Pharmacare. In fact, both the Liberals and Conservatives voted against it, and now we're moving forward with it. So these are our priorities. We did not give up. We will not give up. We will never give up. We're going to continue to fight to make sure people get the help they need.
Yes, but to follow up on that.
Long-term care. And on long-term care, it remains our position that private care has clearly been demonstrated as the worst care. It's clearly demonstrated that people were put second to profits, and that our loved ones, seniors, did not get the best care possible in for-profit homes. And it remains our position that there should not be for-profit care of our vulnerable seniors. Absolutely, that remains our position. And what we fought for is a long-term care act, and that act should include what is the best practices, what are the guarantees to make sure seniors get the best care possible.
So to follow up on that, does the deal break if the Liberals say no, it's going to be private-public? And just a really quick follow-up question on you said you were willing to pull out of this agreement if they don't follow through. Some of the markers are for 2022. Take dental care for 12-year-olds. We're in March. It doesn't look like anything started. Like, how quickly can you start to think about, maybe pulling out because the Liberals aren't upholding their part of the deal?
Very fair question. But I want to just start off. I'm going into this because I want to get this done, because people need the help. So my approach isn't to find ways to tear it down before it begins. I want to find ways to make this work. And I understand, and I want folks to understand, this isn't the end product. This is a starting point. This is our ability to use our power to get results for people, but we're going to have to continue to fight for it. That's why we're going to continue to put pressure to hold this government to account. We're not going to let them off the hook just because we have this deal. We're going to continue to fight. And I'm approaching it with the understanding that I'm going to have to fight every step of the way to get more help to people. But I am hopeful that the deal will be honored. But it is true that at any point in time, we are able to withdraw our support. I'm not going into this with that in mind. I want this to work. I feel like inserting a marriage example here, I'm not going into this hoping for it to fail. I want it to work, but we're going to this eyes wide open. We have full accountability. We have the ability to withdraw support, and but we're hopeful that it works because it's in the interest of Canadians. It's in the interest of people. It's in the interest of kids that they get dental care, and I want that to happen. The first step that we will be able to evaluate this, the first step will be the budget. And so we will look at the budget and assess the commitments that we want. Are they in the budget? Are there costs there? That will be the first test of this relationship.
Alex Barrington, Toronto Star.
Just, Mr. Singh, you keep saying that you still have priorities that are outside of this agreement that you're going to keep pushing for. But haven't you given away your leverage in a minority parliament by saying you're going to support Liberal budgets, you're going to support them on confidence votes? How will you actually secure things that are outside of this deal that you want, including things like the wealth tax or whatever other campaign promises, if you've promised to support the budgets?
Well, we have some evidence not too long ago. In the beginning, the first minority government in 2019, we did not want to cause an election. but there were a number of pieces of legislation that need to be passed. And we were able to use those moments to negotiate for more and to fight for more. And so it wasn't limited to budgets or confidence motions where we were able to fight for additional things. If you know New Democrats, you know that we are fighters. If you know me, I'm a fighter. I'm going to fight every step of the way to want to get these things for people right now, but to continue to fight for more. People need more. My team wants to deliver more. They're not satisfied with just getting a little bit of help to people. We want more help. And that's who we are. That's who I am. So we're going to keep on pushing. We're going to keep on fighting. And there are going to be moments where we disagree. And that is a part of this agreement, that we are going to disagree. But we're hopeful that there are going to be opportunities outside of this agreement where we can actually get more for people. And we're going to continue to do that. And we've done that. And I can point not too long ago. We were able to, in the first minority parliament in 2019, we were able to get help to people, the paid sick leave, starting that was something that was done outside of a confidence vote. We were able to get more help through CERB, that was outside of a confidence vote. And so we were able to get more help to people outside of confidence motions. And we're going to continue to use the tools that we have to do that.
That's interesting, though, because there's this trend of the Liberals being able to say, hey, this is a confidence vote, and sort of qualifying that on any vote that they want. Recently, the Emergency Measures Act vote, where they said, hey, this is going to be a confidence vote, so even if you want to vote against us, even if you're inside the Liberal Party and you don't agree with us, well, it's a confidence vote, so if you vote against us, we're going to trigger an election less than a year after the previous one.
Even in the budget, though, this deal includes that we'll be working on making sure that even in budgets, that what's in there has to be also aligned with our values, and we'll work hard to make sure that each budget reflects our priorities as well.
And just on climate action, the section in the deal on climate action, can you walk us through what exactly is in there specifically that you've secured to happen that wasn't already going to happen anyways?
Certainly. This is a vital question of our time, and so we push for increased action on reducing our emissions, legislation on just transition. This is legislation that we pushed the government to do on fossil fuel subsidies. We campaign on making sure they were ended. The Liberal government has not done the best job of ending fossil fuel subsidies, so we have secured a commitment to end fossil fuel subsidies. The Liberals were initially promising to do it later on by 2025. We have included in this agreement that we should see of the two that we campaigned to remove immediately, that one of them should be removed by the end of this year, by 2022. So a significant move on public financing of fossil fuel sector projects, new discoveries, and those subsidies should be removed. We've also pushed for an energy retrofit that targets low-income and multi-residence apartments. And this is an approach that many progressives and environmentalists think it's really important to support those who have less means in order to make their life more affordable, but also to reduce emissions. So a progressive retrofit program is also included in this deal, as well as commitments to, again, reduce emissions and to meet our targets.
On va essayer de garder les réponses et les questions courtes, s'il vous plaît. Tom Perry, CBC.
Hi, Mr. Singh. Can I ask you, you're talking about helping Canadians, but I'm wondering if you're concerned that you're going to be helping the Liberals with this deal, that you're going to be perceived as the junior partner, and that when election time rolls around, the Liberals are going to say, we delivered Pharmacare, we delivered dental care, so vote for us.
Well, on dental care and Pharmacare, it's pretty easy to make the argument that this is 100% New Democrats. We've got some really good evidence. Not a year ago, folks on my team were saying months ago, I think it was like 9 months ago, the Liberals literally voted against our dental care plan. The exact dental care plan that is in this agreement right now was voted against 9 months ago. We put forward by both the Liberals and Conservatives. We put forward our Pharmacare plan, our Pharmacare Act, 2 years ago, and that was voted against by the Liberals and the Conservatives. So it is very clear that these are things that would not have happened but for New Democrats using our power to secure for people the ability to get their teeth fixed and for people the ability to be able to afford their medication. These are New Democrat, but more importantly, this is help for people, and this is what we've done for people. But that's a legit concern. People might say someone else did it, not us. Frankly, I don't care. I want this to be done because I think it's good for people. I want to get help to people because I know they need it. I've heard so many stories from people, and I'm sure you've heard the stories as well. People that can't afford their medication. Seniors have to cut their pills in half. I literally met a woman in my campaign, in my constituency office, who had her hand over her mouth the entire time we spoke and said, I don't need a handout. I'm working hard. I'm a single mom, but my teeth are messed up, and I'm so embarrassed. I'm so embarrassed by my teeth, and I can't afford to get them fixed. I want her to be able to fix her teeth and to get the help she needs. And that, to me, is the most important. The reason why I got into this job was to get help to people, and we are doing that in this agreement.
And I know that there's concern about you can't breach caucus confidence now, but how tough a sell was this inside your own party? What did you have to tell people to make them accept this deal?
Well, people were very enthusiastic. These are things that New Democrats have long campaigned for. People also raised the concerns that we're going to need to hold the governments to account, and people raised concerns that we need to do more. I agree with all of that. We absolutely are hopeful about this real, significant, and substantial victory for people. This is going to be help that people need. I also know that there's more that we need to do, and we're going to continue to fight for more. And we're going to have to hold the government to account to achieve this. I'm going into this eyes wide open, and we're prepared to do that as well. All of those three things apply, and our team is looking forward to doing the work that we need to do.
We're going to have to go to Zoom for a moment. I will try to come back to the room after if we have time. I think we will have time. Okay, let's start with Mélanie Marquis. La presse, c'est à toi.
Merci. Bonjour.
La position, c'est dans les soins. C'est quelque chose d'important.
With Aiden Shamandi from iPolitics.
Hello. Hey, can you guys hear me?
Hello there. Yes, I can hear you.
Hi, Mr. Singh. Just wondering if you could provide a little bit more details on this oversight committee. It says it's going to consist of a small group of staff and politicians. I'll note that it doesn't explicitly say MPs. So wondering who is going to serve on this, how many people, will it be a rotating group? Any details you can offer would be appreciated.
Just that it'll be a team of my choice, and it'll be of our staff and of our MPs. And we will make that determination, and then we'll let you know about it. But it'll be, the goal of that is, one of the mechanisms that we have in this agreement is to make sure that we hold the government to account, and that will be one of the mechanisms. We'll also have regular House leader meetings, whip meetings, and I'll be meeting with the Prime Minister regularly. And these meetings are essential in ensuring that we get the results for Canadians, that we get them the help they need. And that's why we've included that into the agreement.
Mm-hmm. And after the 2017 BC election with the supply and confidence agreement we saw between the Greens and the NDP, that one was supposed to last until 2021, but we obviously saw the provincial NDP pull the plug in 2020 ahead of time. Given that your agreement is supposed to last until June 2025, but we've seen historical examples of the senior party in the for lack of a better word, coalition pulling the plug early. I'm wondering if that example came up at all during your discussions, and if you got any assurances that wouldn't happen this time around.
Well, one point I know it might come up, so I want to make sure it's really clear. This is not a coalition. We never intended it to be a coalition, and it's never been something that we either put forward, frankly wasn't offered, nor would I've accepted it. This is an agreement to get things done for people. This is us using our power to get help to people. That's what it is. And we model it after other agreements. But yes, there are opportunities for either party to exit, to pull support, to not follow through. The spirit that I'm coming forward with is that people need help. This is a difficult time. People have told me this has been a tough 2 years, tough in lots of ways. And you can imagine how tough it's been for people in so many different ways, whether it's a global pandemic, whether it's a cost of living, or whether it's a war going on. These are really serious times, and people are worried. And in response to that, we want to get people help. We want to get them that help now. But we are going into this clearly knowing that we're going to have to work hard to achieve these things, that we're going to continue to have to fight hard. And there's other things that we're going to have to fight to get more help. And we're prepared to do that. And I want to go into it with a spirit of hopeful optimism, but I will remain critical, and we're going to remain an opposition party. We are going to remain forceful in getting help to people and making sure that this agreement is followed through.
On va continuer avec Hélène Buzetti des Coop de l'information.
Des outils et résultats ne doivent
Avez-vous posé comme
mon sinistre.
Saying that you're basically already deputying the agenda. Hi, so I understand that this is not a coalition, but there's already a line coming out of the Conservative Party that the NDP are running the show, the NDP are dictating the agenda, the NDP dragging the Liberals to the left. Related to this, why didn't the NDP try to go for a coalition, and why didn't you try and secure any cabinet positions or something like that, given the fact that they're already saying that you're basically already deputy PM?
That was never my goal. I'm a New Democrat. I'm not a Liberal. I don't want to be a part of the Liberal government. My team doesn't want to be a part of the Liberal government. I was never intended, never desired, frankly never offered, and we would have never accepted. A lot of nevers. I want to be really clear on this. And what we want to do is get help to people. This is what New Democrats have done. Tommy Douglas did it in the past to get Medicare. Jack Layton did it to get more affordable housing to people. We are doing it to get dental care, to get Pharmacare, to get important action on the housing crisis, on the climate crisis, to make sure people get the help they need. We believe in that, and we're fighting to do that. So it was never intended to join the government. We remain an independent party. We will be opposing the government when they do things that we disagree with. We've said really clearly, for example, we oppose back-to-work legislation, and that's something that we will oppose if the government brings forward. So we will remain an independent party, an opposition party with the ability to hold this government to account and to oppose the government where we see necessary.
And a follow-up, I apologize if I'm perhaps missing something here, but I know you've referred to this written supply and confidence agreement as an assurance, but what confidence do you actually have that Justin Trudeau will keep up his end of the deal? I mean, I seem to recall being promised by someone that the 2015 election would be the last one under first past the post.
Well, we all have the document. It's a public document, and you're going to be looking at it. I'm going to be looking at it really carefully and evaluating the decisions that the government makes. I understand the questions, very fair questions, but I'm going into this because I want it to work, because I want people to get help. That is my team's priority. That is my priority. We want people to get help. We want people to be able to fix their teeth. We want people to be able to afford medication. We want people to be able to find a home, and we want to do our part to fight the climate crisis. These are all priorities for us, and we want this to work. But our tool is, if it doesn't work, then we withdraw our support, and the deal is off. But I'm not going into it thinking that. I'm going into it thinking, let's make this happen. Let's work hard. Let's fight hard. I also want to be clear. I don't think that this is finished. This isn't the finish line. This is the start of an important journey to get help to people. And this journey is going to require us to continue fighting, to continue to push, and to push for more where we can. And we're going to do that.
On va revenir dans la salle. Christopher Nardi, National Post.
Good morning, Mr. Singh. I have to say, I fundamentally still don't understand why you did this, because I look at it, and you said hyperpartisanship was preventing a lot of stuff from moving in the House, but hyperpartisanship is a two-way game, right? And if both parties agree on something, then they can go forward on it, partisanship or not, whereas you didn't want a coalition, so you didn't want to sit at cabinet. Why weren't you able to achieve these things through regular negotiations instead of now basically forming what is a quasi-majority Liberal government? I don't understand why you can already do this.
What we've done is lay out our goals. And we've laid out what people need, help that people need. People need dental care. People need to make sure their teeth are looked after. People need to make sure they can afford medication. People need to know that they can find a home they can afford, and that we're doing everything we can to fight the climate crisis. These are important priorities. And we wanted to lay those out clearly. And we realize these aren't things that are going to happen in 1 year. It's going to take some time to make them happen. So we wanted to lay out a path to getting help to people. We also know that Canadians don't want another election. We just had one 6 months ago. And so there's a lot of instability. There's already a lot of instability in the world. We've got lots of real things going on that people are worried about. We've got a war that we see horrible images coming out of and makes lots of people feel less safe. You know, I feel less safe because of it. We've got a global pandemic that's still something we're dealing with, and we've got the cost of living going up. In this time, Canadians absolutely don't want to have an election. So the threat of an election happening every time there's a confidence vote doesn't help Canadians. It doesn't help create stability in people's lives. So we thought, how can we, in this moment, use our power to get help for people? And what have previous New Democrat leaders done? Well, we've used our power to get help to people. This is exactly what Tommy Douglas did to get Medicare, something that we are so proud of. This is what Jack Layton did to build affordable housing that people are living in right now. There's affordable housing that people have right now because Jack Layton used his power in a minority government to get that help. And so we modeled this after other agreements that other provinces have done. BC and Yukon right now is currently in an agreement. And so we wanted to provide an opportunity to get help to people. We wanted to use our power to get that help to people. And we wanted to provide people with some stability because people definitely don't want to go to another election right now. And so that's what we're providing, some stability, but with clear accountability because it's written down on paper. You can see it, the public can see it, we can see it. Clearly, Liberals can see it, and we're going to make sure that they hold up their end of their agreement, and we're going to hold them to account to get this help to people.
And in terms of, you mentioned that you started thinking about this already in 2019 after that election. How much of this deal making with the Liberals comes from possibly you being disappointed by your 2021 elections where a lot of polls had you doing better, didn't work out? Is this in a way, your way of moving forward with, potentially thinking that you might not do better in an election if another one was to come up quickly?
It's not an electoral strategy. Like, electorally, it probably would have been safer just to keep on fighting and maybe fight every step of the way. This is about getting help to people. We sat down as a team and said, what are we here to do? What is the goal of being elected as a member of parliament? What is the goal of being in parliament, period? For us, New Democrats, it is to get help to people. That is our goal. If we can help people out, if we can make their lives better, then we've done something good. And, we can see what other parties are doing. Conservatives, clearly, that is not their goal. Just to give another example, the official opposition in Canada, they cannot point to anything they've done in the worst time that people have been through in the pandemic to get people help. And sadly, there's been times the Liberals have been playing games with trying to score points instead of getting help to people. We thought, in this difficult time, what do people need? They need help. They need someone who's going to fight for them. And so we used our power to get that help to people. And it's been one of the honors of my life to be able to get help to people that's meaningful, that's going to make people's lives better. And we know that kids are going to get dental care because of this plan. We know that people are going to get their medication because of this plan. We know that because of the power that we've used, we're going to help people find a home to live in. We're going to help people feel better and feel safer in a world that's pretty scary right now. That's what we've been able to achieve. And that, to me, is more important than anything else. Getting the help that people need to them right now is my priority, is my team's priority, and that's what we've done.
Marie Wolf, Canadian Press.
A key part of this deal is support for the government.
So now we're back up to where it's actually live. So we're back to normal speed. We've been watching on 1.5 if you were wondering why Jagmeet Singh seems a little bit speedy today. We've been trying to get through this as quickly as possible. In a moment, we're going to go through a summary of everything we've learned so far from Justin Trudeau's press conference, from Jagmeet Singh's press conference, and I also have here ready for you on my other screen once this is done, the document that they keep talking about, like here are the priorities that we're going to try to get done through this deal. We're going to get into that in more detail with a sort of broad summary here in just a moment.
On confidence matters, but I had a look at the document and it says that votes which impede the government from functioning could be designated a confidence vote. What's to stop the government just designating every single vote which they might find tricky a confidence vote? And do you have a line that you would draw to stop you de facto supporting them on everything that they might have problems with getting through Parliament?
That has been contemplated, and if the government also knows that we have clear principles and values that we will not compromise. One example that I raised directly with the Prime Minister is back to work legislation. There could be a way that the Prime Minister might see a back to work legislation as a confidence vote. We're not going to vote for that. We can tell you right now we're not going to support that. And so if that's something they do, they're on notice right now. They know they're not going to be able to count on us for support on that. That should not come as a surprise. And it's contemplated in this agreement that we will disagree. And that is important. We are keeping our power to disagree. We are keeping our power to hold this government to account. We are going into this very much eyes wide open. We understand that the government needs to be held to account, and we're going to do that. We're doing it in the spirit of getting help to people. We believe very strongly that people need help, and we're going into this agreement with that in mind. So we're using our power. We're not giving up our power. We're fighting to make sure people get help, and that to us is exactly why we got elected, to get people the help they need.
The caucus meeting, whether any of your MPs expressed concern about that they may pay an electoral price for this deal, and that people at the next election might think that a vote for Jagmeet Singh is in fact a vote for Justin Trudeau. I'm wondering whether you have factored this in and whether you feel that it may impact your ability to win, for example, Tory seats or bloc seats, given your closeness to the Liberals.
I kind of addressed this earlier, but it's fair to bring it up. I think it probably would have been electorally, if I'm strictly thinking electorally, probably easier just to fight it out every single vote. But would that be better for people? Would that be better for families? Would that be better for kids that need their teeth looked after? Would that be better for seniors that can't afford their medication? Would that be better for families that can't afford a home? No. And so our priority and my team's priority is, how do we help people? New Democrats get elected to help people out. And I think we can show really clearly that people are better off when you vote New Democrat. Look what we've been able to achieve. 20 New Democrats, 25 New Democrats, and we're able to bring in dental care, Pharmacare, help for housing, help to fight the climate crisis, real help for people. That's what you get when you elect 25 of us. Imagine what happens when you elect another 25 or another 100 or the magic number to form government. That's going to be people's choice. But for us, our priority was we need to get help to people. And so in caucus, things came up around the fact that this is positive, but we're going to need to work hard to hold the government to account. I agree. And in caucus, people were also saying we need to fight for more. I agree. And we're going to do all three. We're going to continue to fight for more. We're going to continue to hold the government to account. And we are enthusiastic about what this means for people, that this is actually going to be some real help, meaningful help in their lives. And that is something that drives us and something that unites all New Democrats, getting people real help. And we're proud of that.
Tanda McCharles, Toronto Star.
Hi, Mr. Singh. You were asked this in French, but I'd like some more clarity, please. You said that the 2% of GDP spending target that NATO and all our allies are looking to Canada to reach. You said that you don't think it's something we'll arrive at or something we should do, is what I understood you to say. So whether you think we should we will arrive at it or not, is it something you will oppose? And why shouldn't Canada do that, hit that target?
I think what we've laid out in terms of our priorities are a couple of things around our Canadian forces. One, we absolutely believe that our forces should have the tools to do what we ask them to do. We send them to do work, they should have the tools and the resources and the training to do that work. So that is something that New Democrats have always believed. We also know that the world does feel like a different place now than it has in the past, and so that means we need to do more. We believe there's ways for us to be effective, and that is to promote peace, to promote diplomacy, to invest in humanitarian aid, to invest in international development. Those are important investments, and we encourage that. When it comes to military spending, what we said and what we believe very strongly is that no decision around military spending should get in the way of our investments in healthcare, should not end up cutting our healthcare or the initiatives that we fought for, making sure people get dental care, making sure that we move forward on Pharmacare. These are priorities, and healthcare is a priority that should not be impacted by government decision with respect to resources for the armed forces.
With respect, sir, that's a lot of words. I want you to address the question very specifically. Are you saying that you will not support Canada spending billions more on strengthening its military capabilities? Are you basically saying that as long as there's money for all the other things, dental, pharma, healthcare, you're good if they spend more?
I've laid out our priorities. I've laid out our priorities, and I've said that our priority is to make sure that healthcare is not impacted, that healthcare is not cut. And we understand that there are resources that our Canadian Armed Forces right now do not have. And we ask them to do work for us, and they don't have the resources and the tools to do that work. So they need to have those resources, and we've long held that position that there are not sufficient equipment for our armed forces to do the work we ask them to do. So they should be able to have the equipment to do the work we ask of them. And that's important. But we've made it really clear. The priority that we have is healthcare, making sure people get that care that they need, and that no decision in the budget should end up impacting our commitments to get people the care they need to take care of their teeth, the care they need to be able to see a doctor, to go to the hospital. That those are things that we need to invest more in and not less in.
So we'll take two more reporters. Glenn.
Glenn McGregor, CTV. Mr. Singh, the agreement, the text agreement that came out this morning refers to a means-tested dental care program, $90,000 household income, ramping down to 70,000 for the copay. Do you anticipate? You just referred a moment ago to Pharmacare being universal. So is that kind of a red line for you that would a Pharmacare plan be means tested in the same way that the dental care plan is, or would it be truly universal regardless of income?
With respect to the dental care plan, that was a plan that we ran on. We ran on it in 2019 and 2021, so that is our plan. That is a plan that we ran on. We believe in universal health care, and we also believe we need to take practical steps to get there. And so with dental care, our dream is still a universal dental care that's covered for everybody. And these are some practical, real first steps to make sure those who have no coverage get coverage. We believe in that. When it comes to Pharmacare, we absolutely fundamentally believe it should be universal and it should be publicly delivered. We understand that to get to a universal publicly delivered, we might start with some crucial medication. We might start by covering medication that is needed for people living with diabetes or people that need heart medication. So we might start with some medication that gets covered, and our goal is to have a formulary that is comprehensive and that covers everything that people need. It might start with some medication and expand, but we want to take real steps that make people's lives better now, and we want to work towards our ultimate goals, which is always universal care for everyone.
Are you expecting to see Pharmacare initiative in the federal budget next month?
Pharmacare is outlined in our agreement to be tabled by next year, 2023, that a Canada Pharmacare Act will be tabled, and that legislation will be presented, and we'll pass it in 2023.
Boris Pou, Le Devoir.
Bonjour, Monsieur Singh. Est-ce que dans le document que vous avez publié sur l'entente, est-ce que
Okay, so since the last question's in French, we're going to dive right in here to a summary. So we've learned a lot here from these two press conferences, and we're going to hear from Candace Bergen in a moment as well. That's the leader of the Conservatives. But I first wanted to provide for people who are just tuning in, here's a summary of everything that just went down. So first of all, we've got a document from the NDP and from the Liberals. This is the agreement document that sort of goes over exactly what this agreement is, or what this partnership is trying to achieve. So let's go over that and highlight it and just talk about exactly what is coming. There's some major big ones that we've seen in the press conferences in terms of Pharmacare and dental care, but we've got the document here that lays things out a lot more clearly. So let's dive into that right now. I'm going to zoom in here so it's clear for you. And we have here, the parties agree to prioritize the following actions while continuing to work on other possible shared priorities through the Oversight group. So first one, better healthcare system, launching a new dental care program for low-income Canadians. This is the means tested. You have to be making under $90,000 annually as a household. This is families, not individuals. So only families that have each of these sort of contributors making $45,000 or under annually, that $90,000 household income, will be able to sort of use this dental care system, and then they say this won't be fully implemented until 2025, which is when the next election would be, or rather when this deal would sort of end. They've sort of said that this is going to last until 2025. Now, let's get into it in a little bit more depth. They are talking about continuing progress towards universal national pharmacare by passing a Pharmacare Act by the end of 2023. So not this year, but by the end of next year, by at least December 2023, and then asking the NDA to develop a national formulary of what these essential medicines will be. So Jagmeet Singh isn't even saying that, hey, we're going to have national pharmacare fully by 2023. It could just be specific medications or only for specific Canadians, but he says that this is at least progress in terms of getting closer to that national pharmacare. This is why he's doing this, is saying, hey, maybe this isn't politically the best idea for me, but as of right now, I'm just going to get rid of chat here so you can see it. As of right now, this is the best thing that we can do as a party to get help to Canadians. This is what Jagmeet Singh is saying. So recognizing that health systems have been stretched because of COVID and working with provinces and territories to deliver better health outcomes for Canadians, kind of broad there. And then tabling a Safe Long-Term Care Act. They want to make sure that long-term care is in the public sector instead of the private sector that we saw here over the past decades. Okay, so now they get into making life more affordable for people. This is something that's really important and something that the Conservatives have pressed on, as well as the NDPs, especially with the record high inflation, highest inflation in the past 30 years that we're seeing as of today, rapidly increasing cost of living, cost of real estate. We're going to see if this is included here. So making life more affordable. The Wrapping It Housing Initiative, we're going to extend that for an additional year. This is sort of like funding from the federal government to build more homes. We also have the Rental Construction Financing Initiative. This is a program that got a lot of flack because, the rentals that were being built often weren't averaging to be actually affordable. They're saying that this is rental construction for affordable units, but it wasn't affordable. It was actually above market rent. So here they're saying we're going to refocus it and make it so that units are under 80% of average market rent. So that's interesting to hear. I mean, like making it 20% under average market rent when our average market rents have gone up by more than 20% in the past 3 years. Well, how effective that actually is a whole different discussion. Moving forward on launching a housing accelerator fund, we need to build more supply in order to make it more affordable, right? Supply and demand. Implementing a home buyer's bill of rights. This is something that Trudeau was big on in the last election, and tackling the financialization of the housing market by the end of 2023. These are broad goals. It's tough to see and tough to know exactly what this means, right? We don't know what any of these promises are until we see it in written legislation. So that's what we're going to be looking out for. But again, not until at latest December 2023. But who knows what the world looks like at that point, over a year from now. So this is saying tackling the sort of investor problem and making a home buyer's bill of rights. This could mean changes for the offer process in real estate. For those who don't know, I actually work in the real estate industry, so I have a thorough knowledge of exactly how that all goes. There are some things that are a little bit less than ideal. You can't share what other bids on a house are, so people have to sort of blindly bid up higher. So this could mean more transparency for that whole process, but remains to be seen until we see the legislation. One-time $500 top-up to the Canada Housing Benefit. Okay, that's interesting. And then also the Early Learning and Childcare Act by the end of 2022, ensuring that childcare agreements have long-term protected funding that prioritizes nonprofit and public spaces. So this is buying into the Liberals' $10 per day childcare, saying that the NDP agree that they're going to support them on this, and saying, hey, we want to make sure that we have long-term protected funding, meaning that even if there is a switch in terms of power long-term, that maybe the Conservatives or the Bloc or whoever takes power, that they can't renege on these promises of this affordable childcare. So we're going to go on here to tackling the climate crisis, advancing measures to achieve reductions of emissions by 2030 compared to 2005 levels, and a net zero by 2050. Moving forward in 2022, creating clean jobs training center to support worker retention, redeployment, and training. This is sort of seen as the answer to all of the folks in Western Canada that work in the oil industry, and saying, okay, hey, we need to transition these folks into jobs that are more future-facing, at least on an environmental level. And also the just transition legislation, so transitioning with feedback from workers' unions, Indigenous peoples, communities, and provinces and territories, more about sort of training, phasing out public financing of fossil fuels, and moving forward on home energy efficiency programs that enhance affordability, so less electricity bills, but also is better for the environment. They're going to frame this as something that makes affordability better, but also is a good environment decision. Here, a better deal for workers. This is something that is going to be fast, ensuring that 10 days of paid sick leave for all federally regulated workers starts as soon as possible in 2022. Liberals had already agreed to this. This was already happening. It's just saying that this is part of the agreement, that it continues to happen. Again, this is only for federally regulated, so even private sector workers, this doesn't apply to them. Introducing legislation by, again, latest December 2023, to prohibit the use of replacement workers, or colloquially referred to as scabs, when a union employer sort of locks out employees. So this is sort of more workers' rights, and definitely a priority of the NDP historically. Let's get into here. Reconciliation. Oh, I zoomed in. Reconciliation, making significant additional investments in Indigenous housing, accelerating the implementation of the pathway to addressing missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and all of the folks that are involved in this, in creating a standing federal, provincial, territorial table on missing murder Indigenous women, and providing the necessary support for First Nations who wish to continue to undertake the work of burial searches. So agreement on that between the two parties. Now we get into a fairer tax system. This is going to be curious to see what Jagmeet Singh has in store for this partnership, right? Because obviously Singh has been sort of pushing very, very hard as of late on creating some sort of wealth tax, as well as excess taxes on excess profits from companies during times like the pandemic. So tax changes on financial institutions that have made strong profits. This is banks, insurance providers, maybe mortgage underwriters, these types of financial industries, and implementing a publicly accessible ownership registry by the end of 2023. Not entirely sure exactly what that is, but maybe we'll find out more. And then making democracy work for people, the changes to voting and things like this. Expanded election day of 3 days, allowing people to vote at any polling place in their district, improving mail-in ballots, and making sure that Quebec's number of seats in the House of Commons remains constant. This is something they've pushed for, even though the population is shrinking in certain areas. They want to keep the same seats there, so there's as much of a Quebecois presence. So very interesting to hear all of that. These are some of the things that they've agreed to, and Jagmeet Singh is saying, hey, we are going to support the Liberals as long as they stick to this plan, and we are going to take a look at the things that they put forward, and if it follows this plan, we're going to support them tacitly, as just in all situations. This is going to come to a head in the April 2023 budget. It should be in April, but of course, Chrystia Freeland and the finance minister and the Liberal government could delay this further, but that remains to be seen. In that April 2023 budget, they outline, for the next year or so, exactly what the government is planning on doing and what funding is going where, what benefits people will be getting. Are there going to be extensions to those? Are there going to be expansions of those? What are they going to do on housing? Where is the money going? This is what's in the budget. And if the budget doesn't include the things that the NDP have outlined in this agreement, well, then we could see a very short-lived partnership here. So super interesting to see. Obviously, a lot of questions around whether this will be actually impactful and helpful for Canadians. Is this sort of partnership going to allow them to pass a whole bunch more in terms of getting help to people on pharmacare, dental care? Or is this going to provide less oversight for the Liberal government, allowing to pass things without proper scrutiny? This is the sort of flip side of the agreement. Obviously, we've got a lot of pressure here on the Liberal government with the rising inflation numbers, though this is a sort of an issue that's going on across the world and isn't directly tied to government decisions, but it is something that the government needs to deal with, right? They sort of pass the buck saying, well, we didn't cause this, so we're not going to do anything. They've got to do something about it. So it's going to be interesting to see whether or not they are able to be pressed on that anymore, because the Conservatives have less power now because they have like a tacit Liberal majority now with this NDP support. So that's super interesting to see. So that does it for the summary here. I'll likely clip this and throw it onto the channel as a summary, but we're going to continue the stream here. So if you're watching this on the summary video, you can click over to the live stream. It's likely over an hour on the channel, and you can dive into what we're going to take a look at next here, which is the thoughts of Candice Bergen, the leader of the Conservatives, and likely it's going to be a lot different than what we've heard so far from the Liberals and the NDP. All right, folks, let's, after that summary, let's get right into hearing some criticisms of this, because this is going to be interesting to watch. We've got less scrutiny, of course, now with this deal. All right, I'm going to flip over here, and let's listen in on Candice, and I'll throw chat back up there. Oh, that's my camera.
Good morning,
and
everyone.
here's chat, so now you can sort of see what's going on.
In context, although we have important issues facing the country, I know all of us
That's super quiet for me.
focused on our desire to see peace in Ukraine.
Try to crank it for you.
And I think even in the midst of the challenges we're going through, we are still very blessed to live in Canada, and our hearts and our focus is on the people in Ukraine and what they're going through. We were planning this morning to come and to announce to Canadians some good news that that Conservatives are going to be presenting a motion this morning, and we'll be debating it today, that would see Canadians save a little bit of money at the pumps. We were hoping we could get agreement with the other parties and that we could see a reduction in taxes, just even a temporary GST and tax holiday for Canadians, and we were looking forward to getting some support on that. And we will be talking more about that shortly. My colleagues will be speaking about that. But something broke last night, and it was obviously something very important. We found out last night that the NDP and the Liberals were meeting secretly, and they've cooked up a backroom deal that would see Justin Trudeau get the majority power that he tried desperately to get last fall in the last election, but he failed to get. This deal means that Canadians have woken up to, in essence, an NDP Liberal majority government. And I think we have to let that sink in. This is an NDP Liberal government, and they have the majority. 82% of voters did not vote for a Liberal NDP government, including millions of Liberal voters. These Canadians woke up this morning to the fact that they have been hoodwinked and they've been deceived by their Prime Minister. Now, let me be clear, this is nothing more than a Justin Trudeau power grab. He is desperately clinging to power. His number one goal, as we have seen over the course of the last 6 years, is always to do what's best for him, not to do what's best for Canadians. Now, make no mistake, the NDP are in charge. What does this mean? Well, it means the decimation of Canadian oil and gas and LNG, which we know this more than ever. That means that is really a way to prop up Putin and Russia. When the NDP Liberal government phase out, which means destroy Canadian oil, gas, and LNG, they are helping Russia. And that was one of the top priorities they had, and that Justin Trudeau has agreed to. It means mining, agriculture, fisheries are all next under the extreme policies of the NDP, which are now Liberal policies. It also means $214 billion, just that we know of, in new spending for Canadians. And that's who's going to be spending. That's who's going to be bearing the brunt of the new NDP Liberal government. All of which for Canadians means more debt, more inflation, more jobs lost, more uncertainty, and frankly, more polarization. This is not a good day for Canadians. I'm here to say that we, Conservatives, are still conservative. We have not changed. We are still here to fight for Canadians. And Canadians can count on Conservatives to be consistently conservative. We are the party of less government spending. We are the party of low taxes. We are champions of Canadian natural resources. We are champions for Canadian farmers, for Canadian small businesses, for Canadian workers. We are champions for Canadian families. We are champions for Canadian taxpayers. And we are here to help Canadians save money. Canadians, millions of Canadians this morning, I think, are in need of hope. Canadians are waking up to this NDP Liberal government. They are, many of them, in shock. There is, I'm sure, a lot of despair in the West right now around this decision. And so we are going to spend the next little while reaching out to millions of Canadians, including those who have not voted Conservative, to let them know that we will continue to be their voice here in Ottawa. And we will do everything we can to hold this NDP Liberal government to account, including speaking directly to Liberal MPs who I'm sure did not tell their constituents that they would now be part of an NDP Liberal government. So with that, I'm going to ask my colleagues Ed Fast, Dan Elbis, and Gerard Deltel to come and talk a little bit about our Opposition Day motion, and then we're happy to take questions. Merci.
Okay, so we're going to skip past this Opposition Day motion. This is something that they're putting in, trying to get the HST or the GST, whatever it is, in different places off of fuel sales, given the increased gas prices. But we're going to flip over here back to when they're taking questions. It seems like it's right here. And let's dive into it. So obviously the Conservatives are not happy about what's going on here because they're kind of left out of the party here, of this partnership. And they also feel like, hey, we don't have the power that we once did. But also, like, we think this is kind of screwed up because people who voted Liberal didn't vote NDP, people who voted NDP didn't vote Liberal, but now they're sort of with their votes supporting both parties. So Conservatives honing in on that as an issue.
Hi, Ms. Bergen. Stephanie Taylor with the Canadian Press. Conservatives are going to have some opportunities, I suppose, to work with the Liberals if they want over the next 4 years. Do Conservatives support the new dental care program this deal is going to be getting Canadians, starting with kids 12 and under?
The NDP Liberal government, which are now telling Canadians this morning, are going to be introducing a national dental program, is something that is going to cost Canadians billions of dollars. Many Canadians already have insurance that their private insurance they're paying for with their employer and have dental coverage. Canadians did not vote for a national dental program, and they certainly did not vote for an NDP Liberal government. So I would tell you that Conservatives will consistently stand up for the taxpayer. We will consistently stand up for good policy that actually provides Canadians with the best options when it comes to dental coverage, Pharmacare coverage. We think there certainly are Canadians that need help, and provinces are providing help, and we'd like to see Canadians who are lower income and need that kind of assistance have that assistance. But that was not what Canadians voted for just a few short months ago. They did not vote for an NDP Liberal government that would be spending billions of dollars in new spending.
Do you believe Conservatives are going to be fighting Justin Trudeau as the Liberal leader come the next election?
I have no idea.
He just said yes this morning.
That will be up to Justin Trudeau to answer.
This is why the title of the stream right now is Trudeau until 2029, because he said, hey, well, now we've got this sort of wrapped up till 2025. I'm going to be leader. And he confirmed in his press conference, I will run again after this. So that could be like over 10 years. Well, it will be over 10 years of Justin Trudeau. That would be 11 years if you add an additional 4 years if he ends up getting a majority government, or could remain in power for that time.
You know this, we are fighting an NDP Liberal majority government right now.
Ms. Bergen, David Baxter with Global News. You mentioned trying to reach out to some Liberals who you feel may be unsatisfied with this. Would you be starting with some of the Liberal MPs who stood against the imposition of the Emergencies Act?
I think we'll see. I mean, this is new. We'll have to see how some of these Liberals respond to questions that we pose, questions that their own constituents will have. But I cannot imagine that all Liberals are comfortable with this. There are many Liberals that are, fiscally responsible. There are many millions of Liberal voters, I believe, who are fiscally responsible, that support Canadian natural resources, that support Canadian having investment grow in Canada. There are a lot of Liberals that are coming to me and saying they're very worried about the economic direction under a Justin Trudeau government. I cannot imagine this morning how they are feeling knowing that we now have a Jagmeet Singh led, because he's basically going to be the Deputy Prime Minister. This is a formal written agreement. We now have a NDP Liberal government in charge. So I am fairly certain there are literally millions of Liberal voters, including some Liberal members of Parliament, who have got to be very concerned this morning.
And now, looking at the past election result, approximately 50% of the vote went either the Liberals or the NDP. We see these partnerships show up in other countries where we do have multiple parties making up parliaments. Last time we saw an agreement like this in Canada was within the BC provincial government. There it still seemed like the NDP were very much driving the ship there. What indication is there beyond just like this initial announcement that Jagmeet Singh is going to play such a pivotal role in the future direction over the next 4 years?
I think the announcement we heard this morning is very clear. Justin Trudeau has basically said what I told Canadians I would do 3, 4, 5 months ago in the election. I've changed my mind because I actually want to feel and know that I have a majority power. And so I will do basically anything the NDP asks me to do in order to keep that power. I think that is proof enough. And I mean, we already have seen Trudeau in his policy move further and further to the left. This is a man who wasn't joking when he said he doesn't think about monetary policy. This is a man that was not joking when he says he admires China's basic dictatorship. He admires very left, very extreme ways of governing and governance. And so when he has now formed a formal agreement with the NDP government, with the NDP party, who is now basically the government, he has deceived Canadians. And I think there's got to be a lot of concern, not just with Canadians, but with Liberal voters themselves. What lengths will this man go to cling to power?
Bonjour, Boris Proulx du Devoir. Ma question est principalement pour Monsieur Devoir, pour qui va créer. Just if you want to add something about that, but perhaps just on fiscal responsibility, if you just want to have comment on the deficit or the fiscal forecast that is ahead with this deal. What's your take on that?
We're as Conservatives, we are very, very concerned with the deficit and the fact that now having an NDP Liberal government means the deficit will be even more out of control than it is. I think Canadians and Canadian businesses, Canadian job creators, Canadian families have to be looking at this and recognizing inflation. There is no hope of inflation getting under control. I know we had hoped as Conservatives we could encourage the Liberal government to maybe step back from their increased taxation that was going to happen on April 1st, even the increased carbon tax. We know that there's some beliefs around the carbon tax helping the environment. We have questions around that, but we at this point had hoped that maybe we could encourage yesterday's Liberal government to reduce taxes for Canadians. Now that we have an NDP Liberal government, I would say there is no hope of reduced taxes. There is no hope of seeing any control of the spending. It is, I think, a very dire situation for Canadians.
Last question, dernière question.
Bergen, are we seeing a movie that we've seen in the past? 1972, Pierre Trudeau also had a deal with the NDP for 2 years to maintain in power, and Mr. Trudeau is doing the same thing with the NDP. Is this back to the future?
Yeah, I think so. I think I was thinking even more of the coalition in Ontario and the NDP Liberal coalition and what happened to Ontario and the disaster that was. So we haven't seen quite as formal a signed agreement. I think this is very new and certainly new in recent history. So, the concerning part is we asked questions. Our former leader, Aaron O'Toole, was very clear saying there's going to be a coalition, and you will recall he was mocked and laughed at, and it will never happen. We woken up this morning, we went to bed last night knowing this not only was possibly happening this morning, we've heard the announcement, we saw the Prime Minister stand up and say that they've been talking, they've had secret deals they weren't telling anyone about. No one knew they were doing this. In the midst of, we've got a war going on in Ukraine, we had the Emergencies Measures Act that was declared, backed by the NDP. One has to wonder, when did these talks start? What kind of agreements were made? What was the quid pro quo that was given? These are important questions that go to the very heart of our democracy. Democracy and openness has been replaced by backroom deals. And so this is certainly about fiscal challenges and the fear of what this will do to the economy of the country. But I believe it goes to the heart of our democracy. The Liberals and the NDP had and have an obligation to be honest and transparent and tell Canadians this is what they've been cooking up. And they didn't do that. They cannot be trusted. These parties cannot be trusted. Neither of these men can be trusted to do what's best for the country. So a lot of implications. We have a lot of work to do, and we're going to get to work doing that. Thanks very much.
Pour Monsieur Deltel, juste en terminant. Vous avez parlé des tendances centralisatrices du NPD, du Parti libéral.
Okay. So it seems like that's what we're getting from Candace Bergen there from the Conservatives. So interesting takes here, right? Like a lot of concern around the economy, and especially she was sort of pressing on this at the very end, was that there's concerns here around like how democratic these sort of deals are, and Trudeau, or rather Jagmeet Singh himself, said that these deal talks started right after the election. So that begs the question, okay, how much has your support between the start of those talks and like now the deal coming to fruition, how much of your support on other bills and other confidence votes like the Emergency Measures Act, was that like something that was baked into these talks, right? Like if you support us on this, even though there are reasons that you may not want to, well, we'll be able to get this this deal done, but we got to put a few weeks in between so people don't draw conclusions about what actually happened. So this is what she's sort of trying to spin this narrative. Whether or not that's true or not, it is up to you to decide. I'm just here to bring you the information about sort of what's going on here and the different takes and the different spins from it. Of course, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, subscribe to the channel and you'll hear more about exactly what's going on here in Canadian politics. We cover Canadian real estate and finance and investing, monetary policy, and crypto as well. If you don't already know, I have a sort of dedicated crypto channel where I go into sort of like more depth that's not as much surface level, but goes into really deep. You can search on YouTube RU55 and subscribe to that channel. Just the letters RU55, like Russ. Hey, that's my name. And we talk a lot more about that. So, but interesting stuff here all around. We're getting to the close of the stream, and as I like to do, getting to the end of streams, is to open it up for a Q&A a little bit. You can see here we've got the chat right up here, and if you tag me with @RussellMatthews, I'll see it sort of glow up on my screen and I'll be able to sort of respond to your question. We're going to do this for 5 to 10 minutes here before we call the end of the stream, but lots to talk about, that's for sure. Thanks for tuning in for folks who may need to sort of depart now before we do this Q&A. But wild stuff. I'm not sure exactly how the sort of how things are going to pan out. I think the questions will be answered once we see how this voting procedure goes forth in the House of Commons and on various bills. Especially the most revealing point is going to be that budget we expect to see in April. Matrix, is this legal? I mean, I'm not familiar with the depths of legality in the political system, but I think that it likely is. It's a sort of not legal, like it's not a legally binding deal, if that's the question. I think that it's just sort of this explanation and sort of they're just saying these things that this is how it's going to go, but either party can sort of back out of this agreement in certain situations, it seems. Matt T, hey, how's it going? Says, what's the only situation where this coalition doesn't go through? Well, Jagmeet Singh made it pretty clear in his press conference. You can go early in the stream where he was talking about this, but he essentially said that, hey, we have this list of priorities. We just went over that in the summary. This list of priorities is what we expect from the Liberal government. If they don't do it, if they don't hold true to these promises that are made, well, we wouldn't support it. This is what Jagmeet Singh at least is saying. Whether or not they will just continue to support regardless of their ability to meet these promises, that remains to be seen. But they said, hey, we'll back out of the deal if they don't do what we want them to do. And we're going to find that out at the April budget. Usually is released in April, some rare cases in May, but we should expect to see that in the next month here. All right. Yeah, nice to see you, Mountain Finance, and Candace here, longtime supporter of the channel. Candace makes great financial videos too, so Mountain Finance, check that out. We've got a question here from Shane. Hey, how's it going, Shane? Good to see you. This is my buddy IRL. Russell Matthews, what is in place in this agreement to make sure the Liberals don't drag their feet on the agreement priorities until the next election? Nothing, Shane. There's nothing in here that says the Liberals actually have to do any of this. Nothing is binding. They've laid out in this sort of document that we went over a little bit earlier called Delivering for Canadians Now, a press release from Trudeau. You can just search Prime Minister's Office press release, but they sort of outlined all of these priorities, and that's all they are, really, is priorities. Nothing binding saying that you have to get this done by this date. There are dates in there that certainly the NDP and hopefully the public will hold them accountable to in terms of these priorities, but whether or not they actually execute on them remains to be seen, though certainly it will be easier to execute on these with the support of the NDP, regardless of what exactly is in the legislation. So if they can easily pass things through quickly, they don't even need to worry about debating it with the Conservatives in the bloc. Even in the Finance Committee, if this sort of deal extends to the Finance Committee in any other committee, it might be a lot easier to pass this legislation and execute. But no real safety nets put into place to make sure this stuff happens, Shane. Matrix Photo Design says, Russell Matthews, but a party I didn't vote for will be making policy. And this is what Candace said. Candace Bergen of the Conservatives said, hey, well, we don't think this is exactly fair because just months ago when we had the election, well, there are a lot of Liberal voters that voted Liberal, a lot of NDP voters that voted NDP, and how many of those voters would be frustrated to hear that, okay, now we actually have this quasi-majority NDP Liberal government. Is that actually the priorities that I voted for? Is that actually, are we actually going to see these NDP things put into place? Some NDP voters will be happy saying, hey, okay, Jagmeet Singh is leveraging his power here to actually get some of these things done that he's been promising, pharmacare and dental care chief among them. Some people will be sort of see this in a positive light. Maybe this will actually get done. Other people will say, hey, it won't get done in the way that I want it to get done, in the sort of full-fledged, again, we saw here, income-tested dental care, only for households making under $90,000 a year, as well as Pharmacare. That doesn't have to be enacted until late 2023, and even at that point can be for very specific drugs for very specific Canadians. So not universal, which is the ethos of NDP. We want universal Pharmacare, universal dental care. It doesn't look like that's happening, so is it a sellout of core values, or is it sort of a negotiation and a push towards those core values, right? These are the different ways to frame it. Okay, let's see here. Again, anyone who wants to ask a question, the best way to do it, at Russell Matthews, just there in the chat. And I can see that more clearly. We've got lots of conversation going in here. Yeah, nice to see you, Shane. That's awesome. Yes, elected, not elected. That's the interesting thing here. All right, well, I think we're gonna get set to wrap things up here. I hope that this video has been helpful for you. I know that this is sort of all happening at once, so hopefully this has helped you parse it apart and come up with your own opinion about it. That's the goal of the channel, not to give you sort of left-leaning policies or right-leaning, or not policies, left-leaning opinions or right-leaning opinions. Sometimes my opinion gets out there a little bit, but I generally try to keep it down the middle. So if you appreciate that kind of content, like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel. That helps me out a ton. I appreciate you all, and I'll see you next time. And keep your eyes out for that summary video that I'm going to throw out later today. All right, see everyone. Have a good one.